Welcome to the Getting Closure podcast. I'm James. I'm here with Cheryl Stainsby. Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, James.
So last time we talked about denial, sort of that thing that stops you from confronting the next step. But I think we sort of talked a lot of that was about fear, wasn't it?
Yes.
It was about sort of, the fact that you couldn't sort of face up to that. But what about the person who's angry? Who's it's either somebody's fault, someone's got to blame. So this COVID wrecked my business, or the border closures, or all the sorts of things we've had to deal with. How do you deal with the anger? What have you seen?
James, anger is just as consuming and just as bad as denial. There are so many people who are so angry at the world or an individual who has disrupted their business. Maybe there's some sort of a legal action.
What do you mean, like a vigil, like someone who hasn't paid a bill, or all
someone who hasn't paid a bill, someone who's suing them, a tradesman who's done a job and now the client's coming back with all sorts of false accusations about work not being done properly.
Yeah.
And this can be really all-consuming to the point where quite often the small business owner becomes totally uncommercial. And
what do you mean by that? So what do you mean uncommercial? Give me examples of what you mean.
Well, really throwing massive sums of money at trying to defend or sue, quite often when it really is a lost cause. They're so angry, they really can't see that sometimes they just need to accept that you need to move on, you need to get some advice about the best way to move on, instead of constantly fighting this uncommercial battle that you're just never going to win. So in a sense,
you're saying that there are situations where a business has been wronged or a business owner has been wronged, but the system is the way it is, that sometimes they've just got to take a tough decision and accept that they have been wronged, but it's kind of too bad. Is that what you're saying or not? What are you saying?
I am saying that, and unfortunately people don't really want to hear that, and it's not right. I'm not saying it's right, but there are large organisations with bottomless pockets,
yes,
who will just keep dragging on a legal action until you run out of money. And I think often the small business owner has to be realistic about who they take on before they exhaust all of their resources to the point where they've now got no money left to look after themselves.
So do you see that anger that you've seen, is it like almost the cliche of a cancer that eats away at the relationships, the family? I mean, where do you see that anger going? Do people come to you angry, for example?
They do come to us angry, and quite often their partners have been saying to them, this is a lost cause. This person that we're fighting against is never going to let you win.
Or they're never going to pay because
they're never going to pay. Yeah. Even if you get the judgment, they're not going to pay. And quite often, partners can see this, but sometimes the small business owner is just so invested in this whole fight that they can't see it. And it's actually very difficult for them to sit down and be commercial about their situation. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 people coming from the outside to sit down with them and make them see that what they're doing is just totally uncommercial, and they need to be realistic about the outcome.
Have you seen anger anger at the system, anger at the whole? Like, have you seen that anger just sprayed around because someone's wronged them? Has that then turned them into a bad business person themselves? Like you've talked about uncommercially chasing debts, but have you seen people letting that eat away at the way they do business themselves and becoming a bad business person? Is that effectively what you're saying it does? Or is it more about anger of what's been bad done to them?
I think it is, but I also think that this anger then permeates their family life too.
So that's the risk. Yeah.
Because dad or mum or whoever it is suddenly becomes a horrible person to be around. They don't spend time with their family, and the family see all this. It has a huge impact.
And the risks of letting this, everybody knows the risks of not facing this are huge.
Marriage breakups are a huge fallout from a lot of this sort of stress.
Yeah, right. So you see that quite often. So it's really about addressing, and again, it's a bit like we've talked about before, you and I, it's about if you see that in your partner, then it's something about trying to talk to them about it.
Yeah.
Let's keep talking.